Walk. Sit with Jesus there. Then walk here. You understand that your relationship with God is revealed through your relationship with people. Sit there so that you become like Him, and then live like Him here. Your possession is not given to you just so that you can spend it on your own pleasure. That's what James says. You have not because you ask not, or you ask with the wrong motives that you may spend it on your own pleasure. You don't have a possession to spend it on your own pleasure. You have a possession to spend it on what His will and purpose is for your life. And His will and purpose for your life is to reveal His life and His purposes through your life. All right, I'm wrapping up. You guys are getting teary-eyed on me. Chapter 6, verse 10. Finally, brethren, be strong in the Lord and the power of His might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand. Stand. Just stand. That's all you got to do. Stand. Stand with the whole armor of God on. And we've reduced the armor of God to some little Sunday school, children's church teaching. It's so much more than that. The helmet of salvation is the renewed mind. When you think according to the pattern of heaven, it's very hard for the enemy to penetrate your thoughts in your mind. When you renew your mind to the pattern of heaven and not the pattern of this world, you'll think along the lines of heaven and not along the lines of this world. So that when poverty or sickness or disease try to attack your family, you're not down here, you're up here. Listen, I live in the same world you do. Elijah has had an earache from swimming for the last couple of days. We put alcohol in it, but then we prayed for infection to leave. And that's just the way we are. We have leg growing out parties at my house all the time. You should come. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch a little 4-year-old girl grow out her brother's leg. Why is his leg short? I don't know. Just because they're growing all the time and they just get out of whack and they like to grow out each other's legs. They do. You think I'm going to stop that? You think that I'm going to stop my kids from enjoying the supernatural side of heaven? There's no way. In fact, I'll encourage it. And maybe today when we get home, we'll check their legs just for the fun of it. Because if they start out at 6 years old with short legs, what are they going to be doing when they're 26? My Bible says that nothing is impossible. If you want to reduce that to whatever, go ahead. But it says nothing. That means blind eyes, deaf ears, lame, whatever. Nothing's impossible. That means when Jesus says you can speak to a mountain and it moves, that the mountain must move. Whatever the mountain is, move. And if you train a little 6-year-old, 5-year-old, 4-year-old child to do that, what will they be doing when they're 30? Well, stand. This is what standing looks like. You understand that? You understand Jesus had controversy surrounding His entire ministry? What did He do? Stood. That's right. Come on, Pharisee, you want to bring me a guy with a withered hand to test me? Go ahead. Stretch forth your hand and let's see what happens. Jesus said, if you won't believe me for my words alone, then at least believe me for the works themselves. You want to know what the problem is with the church? We don't have miracles to stand on, much less words anymore. There's a story about the Catholic Church years and years ago. St. Francis, the Pope leads St. Francis into the Catholic, the Colosseum and all that stuff that still exists today. And he takes them down into the treasury room. Shows them all the riches of the Catholic Church. They were wealthy, millionaires, literally, and still are today. Treasures from the Crusades that they had captured, their ancient stuff, treasures. Take St. Francis down into the treasury room to show him all of this stuff. proud of it. And the Pope looks at St. Francis and says, well, the church can no longer say, silver and gold have I none. Remember that story from Peter and John as they're walking through the street, silver and gold have I none. The Pope said the church can no longer say, silver and gold have I none. And St. Francis looked at him and said, and neither can it say, rise up and walk. I don't know what God you believe in, but I happen to believe that my God is supernatural. I believe He does miracles, and I believe He does them on a daily basis. I believe He'll heal the guy at the gas station who's smoking a cigarette and heal him while he's smoking, because I seen Him do it last week. I can tell you a few more stories if you'd like. But the point is that God is a supernatural God. And Jesus went about doing the good works of His Father. Jesus said, I don't do anything unless I see my Father do it or hear my Father say it. And what did Jesus do every day of His life for 3.5 years? Healed the sick, raised the dead, cleansed the lepers. And that's why Nicodemus came to Him on the rooftop. Nicodemus, the Pharisee, did not come to Jesus because of Jesus' theology or teaching. Nicodemus came to Jesus and said, Jesus, we know that no one can do these works except for God be with you. What's he talking about? He's talking about the supernatural attributes of Jesus' ministry. Jesus stood. To stand. It means to not be wavered, to not be double-minded. And on this topic, I will not be. I've not seen everybody healed. I've only seen a few. A small minority. And I'm sorry for the ones that haven't been. But the promises of God will not go unfulfilled. The promises of God are His promises. And they are yes and amen in Jesus. Stand. That's all you got to do. Just stand. Listen, don't think that the devil's not going to poke you. Don't think that people's attitudes aren't going to come up against you. Hello? Don't think that you're not going to be tested and tempted, but you just stand. And God's armor is so complete. God's armor is so sufficient that all you have to do is stand with it on. You don't have to swing a sword. You don't have to lift a shield. Why? Because it's the place of rest. It's our inheritance. The place of rest. That when you're at home and the phone call comes. That when you're at the doctor's office and the report comes in. That when you're wherever, you're in the place of rest because it's your inheritance. It doesn't mean you're laying on the couch waiting to be served. It simply means that you're standing in faith of your possession and your inheritance, that it's in the heavenly places. It is not in this world. It's in the heavenly places. And when something comes against you, you just simply stand. The armor is sufficient enough that all you have to do is stand. All you have to do is stand. And listen to what Paul says. I'll close with this. He says, therefore, verse 13, take up the whole armor of God. It only works when it's all there. That you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand, stand therefore. All you got to do is stand. Don't be moved by every wave and wind of doctrine, Paul said. Just stand. When people come against you, just stand. When the enemy tempts you, just stand. You understand that Paul wrote this book from prison? From prison. Not our types of prison with Nintendo and DS and 3 meals a day and snack time at 1 o'clock. Prison. Rats. Feces on the floor. Water dripping. Constantly wet, damp, stench. Prison. And listen to what he's telling us from prison. He's saying, listen, I'm seated with Christ in heavenly places. Doesn't matter where I am. I'm seated with Him. And because I'm seated with Him, I have the ability to walk out my life as He would have me walk out. What kept the Israelites from entering into the promised land? It was the condition of their hearts. And chapter 4 is all about the condition of your heart. Walk and make sure that the condition of your heart is in right standing, right relationship with God, and it's ordered by heaven and not by this world. Sit, walk, and stand. That's how we enter into our possession. That's how we enter into what it is that God has for us. Stand. Paul writes this from prison, one of the most powerful books in all of the Bible. And he's telling us how to enter into a promised land, and he's writing it from prison. Are you hearing what I'm trying to say? He's writing it from prison, but he's writing one of the most powerful books in all of the Bible. And he's saying, this is how you enter into your promised land. I may be in prison, but I've entered into my possession. I may be in prison, but I've received my inheritance. And God uses Paul in prison to not just minister to the church in Ephesus, but to minister to millions and millions and millions and millions of believers from that time to this time in prison, because he's seated with Christ in heavenly places. And the things of this world grow strangely dim at the light of his glory and his grace.